In the quaint little town of Maplewood, Vermont, the early signs of autumn were already visible. The trees lining the streets wore shades of amber and crimson, their leaves crunching softly underfoot as a steady drizzle fell from a gray, overcast sky. It was the kind of day that made people retreat indoors, huddled around cups of hot coffee or warm soup. But Sam wasn't indoors. He stood behind his humble bread stall, tucked away in a corner of the town square, with a faint smile on his face despite the cold, damp air. Sam wasn't the kind of man who complained about the weather or the slow days at his stall. He had been baking bread for as long as he could remember. His hands, roughened from years of kneading dough and pulling hot trays from the oven, were his pride. To him, bread wasn't just food, it was comfort, a symbol of care. A loaf of bread can warm not just the body but the heart, he'd say whenever someone asked why he'd chosen such a simple profession. The rain fell heavier now, turning into a steady downpour. The usually lively town square was nearly empty, save for a few hurried pedestrians clutching umbrellas and bags, rushing to escape the wet chill. Sam adjusted his knit cap, brushing a few stray raindrops off the counter of his stall. Business had been slow all week, but he didn't let that dampen his spirits. He arranged his freshly baked loaves, letting the rich, yeasty aroma mingle with the earthy smell of rain. He hoped it might lure a passerby. As he stood there, a movement at the edge of his vision caught his attention. Across the square, under the canopy of a leafless tree, a small figure stood motionless. Sam squinted through the rain, his curiosity piqued. It was a young girl, no older than 9 or 10. She was clutching a faded, broken umbrella that did little to shield her from the rain. Her clothes were worn and too light for the weather, a thin, patched jacket and sneakers with soles that looked ready to give out. Her dark hair clung to her pale face, and her eyes, wide and searching, were locked on his stall. Sam's heart tightened. He had seen his share of tough times and knew the look of hunger when he saw it. The girl didn't move closer. She stayed rooted in place, as though the invisible line between them was one she didn't dare cross. He could tell she was soaked to the bone, trembling slightly as the cold wind whipped through the square. She hugged her small, tattered bag tightly against her chest as if it held her last possessions in the world. Sam leaned forward, trying to appear as non-threatening as possible. "Hey there, kiddo," he called out, his voice warm and kind. "Come on over. You look like you could use something warm." The girl flinched, startled by his voice. Her grip on the umbrella tightened as she glanced nervously around as if searching for an escape. Sam softened his tone even further. "It's okay, really. I don't bite. Come on, I've got some bread fresh out of the oven. It's still warm." He gestured to the stall, lifting a loaf of golden brown sourdough from the tray to show her. For a moment the girl hesitated, her big, uncertain eyes scanning him as if trying to gauge whether he was genuine. Finally, she took a cautious step forward, then another, her movements slow and deliberate. As she approached, Sam could see just how small she was, her frame thin and her cheeks hollowed slightly by hunger. She stopped a few feet away, still clutching her umbrella and bag, her body tense like a coiled spring. "Hi," Sam said gently, crouching slightly to meet her eye level. "What's your name?" The girl didn't answer immediately. She stared at the loaf of bread in his hands, her gaze filled with both longing and restraint. I don't have any money," she mumbled, her voice barely audible over the rain. Sam's heart ached at her words. He straightened up and shook his head. "Money? Who said anything about money? Bread is for everyone, especially when they're hungry. You wait right there." Before she could protest, Sam grabbed a paper bag and began filling it. He placed a loaf of bread inside, then added a few cookies, a slice of warm apple pie he'd baked that morning, and even a small buttery muffin. It wasn't much, but he hoped it would be enough to warm her up. He folded the bag carefully and handed it to her. The girl looked at the bag, then at him, her expression a mixture of disbelief and gratitude. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice cracking slightly. "Of course I'm sure," Sam said with a smile. "Go ahead, take it, and don't forget to share it with someone if you can. That's the rule, okay?" The girl's trembling hands reached out to take the bag. As her fingers brushed against his, Sam noticed how cold they were. She clutched the bag to her chest as though it were the most precious thing she'd ever been given. For a long moment, she stood there, silent, her lips quivering as if trying to form words. "Thank you," she finally whispered, her voice breaking. Tears welled up in her eyes, though she quickly turned her face away to hide them. "I won't forget this, I promise." Before Sam could say anything else, the girl turned and darted away, her small figure disappearing into the rain. Sam stood there watching her go, his heart heavy yet full. He wondered who she was, where she had come from, and what had brought her to his stall that day. He had met many people in need before, but there was something about her, a quiet resilience beneath her vulnerability, that struck a chord deep within him. That night, as Sam closed up his stall and walked home through the rain, he couldn't shake the image of the girl from his mind. Her thin frame, her timid smile, her whispered thanks, all of it lingered with him. He wondered if she had a safe place to sleep, or someone waiting for her. The thought of her being alone out there made his chest tighten. When he arrived home, he placed his apron on the hook by the door and sat by the window, staring out at the storm. The streets were empty now, the only sounds the steady patter of rain and the occasional rumble of thunder. He hoped, wherever the girl was, that she was safe, warm and dry. Sam didn't know it yet, but that brief encounter on a rainy afternoon would change his life forever. The little girl with the broken umbrella, whose name he didn't even know, had left a mark on his heart that time wouldn't erase. The years had passed slowly for Sam, marked by early mornings and long hours. Life in Maplewood, Vermont hadn't changed much in over a decade. The seasons came and went, bringing tourists during the sunny summers and quiet solitude during the cold winters. But for Sam, every day began the same. Pre-dawn hours spent kneading dough, the smell of fresh bread filling his small rustic kitchen, and the satisfying rhythm of a life he'd come to know so well. Yet despite his simple contentment, there were moments when his thoughts wandered back to a cold, rainy afternoon 12 years ago. He could still picture the little girl who had stood at the edge of his stall, her tattered clothes clinging to her, her face pale with hunger. It wasn't the first time he had given bread to someone in need, but there was something about her that had stayed with him. Her quiet determination, the way her hands had trembled as she took the bag, and the promise she had made to never forget his kindness. He often wondered what had become of her. Was she safe? Did she find someone to take care of her? Had she grown up into a strong young woman, or had life's hardships worn her down? It was a bright autumn morning when something unusual happened in Maplewood. Sam was setting up his stall in the town square, arranging his loaves and pastries with care, as he always did. The sun cast a golden glow over the cobblestones, and the crisp air carried the scent of his freshly baked sourdough. The square was slowly coming to life, with shopkeepers opening their doors and locals stopping for morning coffee. It was a day like any other, until the car arrived. The sound of an engine broke through the chatter of the square, low and smooth, unlike the usual hum of old pickup trucks and worn sedans that passed through town. Sam looked up from his stall and saw a sleek black sedan glide into the square, its polished surface gleaming under the sun. It was a car that didn't belong in Maplewood, a town where practicality often outweighed luxury. The sedan rolled to a stop directly in front of his stall, drawing curious glances from the few people milling about. Sam wiped his hands on his apron and stood a little straighter, squinting at the tinted windows. He wasn't used to this kind of attention, and his mind raced with possibilities. A tourist, maybe, someone passing through. The car door opened and a woman stepped out. She was striking, her presence commanding without being overbearing. She wore a tailored beige suit, perfectly cut, and carried a designer handbag that looked as though it cost more than Sam's entire month's earnings. Her heels clicked softly against the cobblestones as she approached his stall, her movements elegant but purposeful. Sam felt a twinge of unease. He wasn't sure why, but something about her was familiar, though he couldn't place where or when he might have seen her before. "Good morning," the woman said, her voice warm but confident. Sam blinked, caught off guard by her tone. Good morning. Can I help you?" he asked, gesturing to the bread neatly arranged on the counter. The woman's eyes softened as she took a step closer. "You're Sam, aren't you? Sam the baker?" He hesitated. "That's me. Do I know you?" Her smile widened slightly, but there was a flicker of emotion in her expression, something unspoken that seemed to linger just beneath the surface. She placed her handbag gently on the counter and leaned forward ever so slightly. "You don't remember me, do you?" Sam frowned, searching her face for any hint of recognition. "I'm sorry, miss, but I can't say I do. Should I?" The woman chuckled softly, her voice tinged with nostalgia. "It's been a long time, 12 years to be exact." 12 years. The number made Sam pause. Slowly, memories began to stir. Faint, scattered images of another day, another face. His brow furrowed as he tried to piece it together. 12 years. he repeated, almost to himself. The woman nodded, her smile turning bittersweet. I don't blame you for not remembering. It was a rainy day and you had so many other things on your mind. But I've never forgotten you, Sam. She reached into her handbag and pulled out a small, worn object, a paper bag carefully folded and preserved. She placed it on the counter between them, and Sam's breath caught in his throat. He recognized it immediately. The bag was old, the creases worn soft with time, but it was unmistakably one of his. I kept it, the woman said quietly. All these years I kept it, because this bag and the kindness it represents saved me. Sam stared at her, his mind racing as realization dawned. You're the little girl, he whispered, the one with the broken umbrella. She nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. My name is Olivia, she said, her voice trembling slightly. And you gave me more than just bread that day. You gave me hope when I had none. You didn't know it, but I was at the lowest point of my life. My parents had just died in a car accident, and I'd been sent to live in a group home. I felt so alone, so invisible. But then you saw me. You treated me like I mattered. Sam's throat tightened, and he had to clear it before he could speak. I had no idea, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I just saw a child who needed a little help. I never imagined. Olivia smiled, though her eyes were damp. You never imagined, but that's the thing about kindness. It doesn't need to be big to make a difference. That bag of bread and cookies got me through that day. It reminded me that there were good people in the world, and it gave me the strength to keep going. I promised myself I'd never forget you, and I never have. Sam didn't know what to say. He felt a strange mix of pride and humility, his heart swelling with gratitude and disbelief. You've grown into such an incredible young woman, he finally managed. I always wondered what happened to you. I hoped you were okay. Olivia laughed softly, dabbing at the corner of her eye. I'm more than okay. That day was a turning point for me, Sam. A few months later, I was adopted by an amazing family. They gave me love and stability, and I worked hard to build a life for myself. I went to college, started a business, and, well, here I am. Sam shook his head, still trying to process it all. Here you are, he echoed, a faint smile tugging at his lips. And you came all this way just to tell me that? Olivia's expression grew serious, and she reached out to place a hand on his. I came all this way to thank you, she said, her voice steady, but also to ask for your help. I have a proposal, something I've been dreaming of for years, and it won't work without you. Sam's eyes narrowed in curiosity. A proposal? Yes, Olivia said, her eyes bright with determination. I want to open a bakery, not just any bakery, but one that serves as a safe haven for people like me, who need a little kindness to get through the day. I want to create a place where everyone feels welcome, no matter who they are or what they're going through. And I want you to be a part of it. Sam blinked, stunned. Me, why me? Because you're the one who taught me what kindness looks like, Olivia said simply, and because I can't think of anyone better to help me bring this dream to life. Sam stood frozen, trying to absorb the weight of Olivia's words. The town square, usually bustling with chatter and movement, seemed to fade into silence around them. The idea she had just shared was nothing short of extraordinary, and yet to Sam, it felt almost surreal. He had spent his life in this small town, kneading dough, baking bread, and tending to his modest stall. The thought of stepping into something as ambitious as a city bakery, a place designed to be a beacon of hope, was almost too much to comprehend. I don't know what to say, Sam finally murmured, scratching the back of his neck. I mean, Olivia, this is an incredible idea, but me? Running a bakery in the city? That's way out of my league. Olivia's eyes softened and a smile curved her lips. Sam, you've been running a bakery your whole life. It might not be in a big, shiny building, but it's here, in this square, where people know they can count on you. You've done more than sell bread. You've built a community. That's exactly what I want to create, but on a larger scale. Sam let out a breath, shaking his head. I don't know. I'm just a simple man. This stall is my world. I've never lived anywhere else, never done anything else. What if I mess it up? You won't, Olivia said firmly. I've seen what you can do, Sam. You didn't just give me bread that day. You gave me dignity. You treated me like I mattered when no one else did. That's not something you can teach. It's who you are. Her voice carried such conviction that Sam felt his doubts falter, if only slightly. He looked down at his hands, the hands that had spent decades shaping dough, and thought about all the people who'd come to his stall over the years. He'd always believed in the power of small acts of kindness, but he'd never imagined those acts could lead to something as profound as this. "Tell me more," Sam said cautiously, his curiosity starting to outweigh his uncertainty. "What exactly do you have in mind?" Olivia's face lit up and she stepped closer, her excitement palpable. "I've already found the perfect location, a spacious, light-filled spot in the heart of the city. It's a beautiful space, but more importantly, it's accessible to everyone. I want it to be more than just a bakery. I want it to feel like home, a place where people can come to feel safe, cared for, and included." She paused, her eyes glinting with determination. "I also want to create a program where people in need can get a warm meal or take home a loaf of bread without worrying about cost. There will be a pay-it-forward system, where customers can contribute to cover the costs for those who can't afford it. And I want you to be at the heart of it all, Sam. Your recipes, your heart, your story, it's what will make this place special." Sam couldn't help but feel a spark of excitement as she spoke. The vision she painted was inspiring, a testament to the ripple effect of kindness. But with excitement came doubt, and that doubt weighed heavily on him. "Olivia, it's a beautiful idea," he admitted, "but I'm not sure I belong in a place like that. The city, it's so different from here. I've never been good with change. What if I'm not ready for something like this?" Olivia reached out and placed a reassuring hand on his arm. "I understand that it's a big step, Sam, and I won't pretend it's going to be easy. But I wouldn't be here asking you to do this if I didn't believe in you completely. You taught me that even the smallest gesture can make a difference. Imagine what we could do together if we gave people a space where kindness is baked into everything we do." Sam looked into her eyes, seeing not just a grown woman, but the little girl he had once helped. Her determination reminded him of the resilience he had seen in her all those years ago. But still, the idea of leaving everything he'd ever known was overwhelming. "What about the people here?" he asked, gesturing to the square around him. "This stall might be small, but it's part of this town. People count on me." "They'll still have you," Olivia assured him. "We can set up a plan to keep the stall running with someone you trust. And you'd be coming back to visit, I'm sure. But Sam, think about the lives you could touch in the city. Think about the little girl who might walk through our doors one day, hungry and scared, and how your bread could give her hope, just like it did for me." Her words struck a chord deep within him. Sam thought about the countless mornings he had spent baking, wondering if what he was doing truly mattered. He had always found comfort in the simplicity of his work, but now, for the first time, he began to see the bigger picture. "What would it look like?" he asked, his voice quieter now. "This bakery of yours, how would it work?" Olivia's face brightened as she launched into more details. She described the open kitchen, where customers could watch the bread being made, the warm seating areas filled with mismatched chairs and tables to make it feel like home, and the community corner, where people in need could pick up a free meal or loaf of bread. She talked about outreach programs, partnerships with local shelters, and classes where people could learn to bake and share their own recipes. As she spoke, Sam began to imagine it. He pictured the smell of fresh bread wafting through the air, the hum of conversations, and the sight of people from all walks of life coming together over something as simple as a loaf of bread. For a moment, he allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, he could be part of something so meaningful. But then the doubts crept back in. "I'm not used to working with people on such a big scale," he said hesitantly. "I've spent most of my life alone in my kitchen. What if I can't handle it?" "You don't have to do it alone," Olivia said gently. "I'll be there every step of the way, and we'll hire people who share our vision, who believe in what we're trying to do. This isn't just about running a business, Sam. It's about creating a family, a community." Sam nodded slowly, her words beginning to settle into his heart. He wanted to believe in her vision, to take the leap she was offering, but the fear of failure lingered, a heavy shadow he couldn't quite shake. "I'll need some time to think about it," he finally said. "This is a lot to take in." "Of course," Olivia said, her smile softening. "Take all the time you need. I'm not in a rush, Sam. I just needed you to know that you're the only person I can imagine doing this with." She reached into her bag again and pulled out a small envelope. "Here's my number and some details about the space I found. Call me when you're ready, okay?" Sam took the envelope, feeling its weight in his hands as though it carried more than just paper. It carried possibility, a future he hadn't dared to dream of. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. As Olivia walked back to her car, Sam stood there, watching her go. The square around him slowly came back to life, the sounds of morning chatter and footsteps filling the air once more. He looked down at the envelope in his hands, then back at his stall, the place that had been his home for so many years. For the first time in a long time, he felt something stir within him, something that felt like hope, mixed with just a touch of fear. It wasn't just about leaving his comfort zone. It was about stepping into a new chapter, one that could change not only his life, but the lives of countless others. And though he wasn't ready to say yes, he couldn't bring himself to say no. The decision weighed heavily on Sam in the days following Olivia's proposal. Every morning, as he kneaded dough and prepared his bread stall, his thoughts returned to the black car, the envelope, and Olivia's heartfelt plea. The little brown paper bag she had saved for 12 years sat in the back of his mind, a quiet reminder of how even the smallest act of kindness could ripple outward in ways he'd never imagined. But while the idea of joining Olivia in her ambitious plan filled him with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years, it also terrified him. Maplewood was his home. He knew every face in the town square, from the shopkeepers who waved at him each morning to the elderly couple who bought the same loaf of sourdough every Thursday. Here he was a part of something familiar, something steady. The thought of leaving it all behind, his stall, his routines, his quiet life, felt like stepping into the unknown without a map. One particularly brisk morning, as he arranged loaves of warm rye and buttery croissants on his counter, an old friend stopped by. Mr. Harper, a retired postman with a penchant for storytelling, lingered at the stall, sipping coffee from a thermos. "You've been quieter than usual, Sam," Mr. Harper said, his sharp eyes narrowing. "Something on your mind?" Sam hesitated. He hadn't told anyone about Olivia's proposal. It felt too big, too fragile to share with anyone else just yet. But Mr. Harper's steady presence gave him a sense of comfort, and before he could stop himself, the words came spilling out. "There's this opportunity," Sam began, carefully choosing his words. "Someone I helped a long time ago came back to thank me. She wants me to help her open a bakery in the city, a big one, something special." Mr. Harper raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "The city, huh? That's a far cry from Maplewood. What's holding you back?" Sam sighed, leaning against the counter. "Everything, I guess. This stall is my life. It's simple, but it's enough for me. And the city, it's overwhelming. What if I fail? What if I leave here and regret it?" Mr. Harper took a long sip of his coffee, then set the thermos down with a quiet thunk. "Sam, I've known you for a long time, and one thing I've learned is that you're the kind of person who gives everything his best. If this girl thinks you're the right person to help her, maybe you are. Sometimes the things that scare us the most are the things that push us to grow." Sam nodded, but his doubt still clung to him like the morning fog. "It's just, this stall has been my whole world. I don't know if I'm ready to leave it behind." Mr. Harper smiled, his eyes twinkling. "Well, maybe it's not about leaving it behind. Maybe it's about taking a part of it with you." That night, as Sam closed up his stall, he found himself thinking about Olivia's words again. She had painted a vivid picture of the bakery, a place filled with warmth, kindness, and second chances. He could almost see it, the sunlight streaming through wide windows, the smell of bread wafting through the air, and the sound of laughter as people gathered around tables. It wasn't just a bakery. It was a chance to make a real difference, just as he had for Olivia so many years ago. The next morning, Sam picked up the envelope Olivia had left him. He carefully unfolded the papers inside, studying the address of the space she had found and the notes she had scribbled in the margins. Her enthusiasm was evident in every detail, from the layout of the kitchen to the plans for a community corner where anyone could grab a free meal or loaf of bread. No questions asked. He decided to visit the space. The drive to the city was long, and Sam's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as the familiar landscape of Maplewood gave way to the towering buildings and bustling streets of the city. The noise and movement were overwhelming, a far cry from the quiet rhythms of his small town. But as he followed the directions Olivia had given him, he found himself pulling up to a building with wide glass windows and a bright red door. Olivia was already waiting outside, her smile warm and welcoming. "Sam," she called, waving him over. "I'm so glad you came." She led him inside, and Sam took a moment to absorb the space. It was empty, just a wide open floor with polished wooden beams and high ceilings, but he could see the potential. Olivia walked him through her vision, pointing out where the ovens would go, where the display cases would be, and how the seating area would feel cozy and inviting. "I know it's a big change," Olivia said as they stood in the middle of the room, her voice soft. But this could be something amazing, Sam. Together, we could build something that really matters. Sam looked around, imagining the space filled with people, families, friends, strangers brought together by the simple joy of good food and shared moments. He thought about Olivia's story, about the way a single loaf of bread had changed her life. And he thought about all the other lives they could touch if he took this leap. "I'll do it," he said finally, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions in his chest. "I'll help you build this bakery." The weeks that followed were a blur of activity. Sam packed up his stall in Maplewood, saying heartfelt goodbyes to the customers who had become like family over the years. Many of them expressed their sadness at seeing him go, but they also encouraged him to follow this new path. "You've always had a gift, Sam," Mrs. Willard, a longtime customer, told him as she bought her final loaf of bread. "It's about time more people got to experience it." When Sam arrived in the city, he was overwhelmed by the sheer scale of everything, the noise, the crowds, the pace of life. But Olivia was there every step of the way, guiding him through the transition and reminding him why they were doing this. Together, they threw themselves into the work of building the bakery from the ground up. Sam spent hours perfecting recipes, blending his traditional methods with new techniques, while Olivia handled the logistics and coordinated with local organizations to set up their community outreach programs. They worked side by side, often late into the night, their laughter echoing through the empty space as they imagined the future. Slowly but surely, the bakery began to take shape. The ovens were installed, the walls painted in warm, inviting colors, and the shelves filled with loaves of bread, pastries, and cakes. They hung a sign above the door that read, "Hearth and Heart, a community bakery." Opening day arrived and Sam stood at the counter, his hands trembling slightly as he adjusted his apron. The bakery was alive with energy, the smell of fresh bread mingling with the hum of excited voices. The line of customers stretched out the door, a mix of locals, curious passers-by, and people who had heard about the bakery's mission. Olivia stood beside him, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. "We did it, Sam," she said, her voice filled with pride. "This is just the beginning." As the first customers entered, Sam greeted them with his signature warm smile, handing out samples of bread and chatting with each person who came through the door. He felt a surge of gratitude as he watched the bakery come to life, filled with laughter, conversation, and the simple joy of sharing good food. Later that afternoon, a young woman approached the counter with 2 small children in tow. She looked nervous, her clothes worn but clean. "I heard this was a place where you don't have to have much to feel welcome," she said hesitantly. Sam's heart swelled and he nodded. "That's exactly what this place is. What can I get for you?" He handed her a warm loaf of bread and 2 cookies for the children, who smiled shyly as they clutched their treats. The woman's eyes filled with tears as she whispered, "Thank you." Sam watched them leave, his chest tight with emotion. He glanced over at Olivia, who was helping another customer, and felt a deep sense of fulfillment. For the first time, he understood the power of what they had built together, a place where kindness could grow, one loaf at a time. The power of kindness. The weeks following the grand opening of Hearth and Heart, a community bakery, were a whirlwind of emotions for Sam. Every day brought new faces through the door, each with their own story, and every interaction reminded him of why he had taken the leap. The bakery quickly became a beloved fixture in the city, not just for its delicious bread and pastries, but for the warmth and sense of belonging that greeted everyone who stepped inside. On the surface, things seemed to be running smoothly. Sam and Olivia had found their rhythm, with Sam pouring his heart into the kitchen and Olivia handling the operational and community outreach side of the business. But beneath it all, Sam couldn't help but feel the tug of nostalgia for his simple life back in Maplewood. Though he loved the bakery and the people it served, he often found himself missing the quiet mornings in the town square, the familiar faces, and the slower pace of life. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the bakery doors closed for the night, Sam sat at one of the wooden tables near the window, nursing a cup of tea. The bakery was quiet now, the air still fragrant with the day's baking. Olivia joined him, a notebook in her hand and a tired but content smile on her face. "You look deep in thought," she said, setting the notebook down and taking a seat across from him. Sam gave a small chuckle. "I guess I am, just thinking about how much has changed in such a short time." Olivia tilted her head, studying him. "Do you miss it, Maplewood?" He hesitated before nodding. "Yeah, I do. I miss the simplicity of it, The quiet mornings, the people I've known my whole life. This is amazing, Olivia. It's more than I ever thought I'd be part of. But sometimes it feels overwhelming. Olivia reached across the table, placing a hand over his. I get it, Sam, I really do. This is a big change, and it's okay to miss what you left behind. But I hope you know how much you've already done here. The way people light up when they walk through those doors, that's because of you. Because of the way you make them feel seen and cared for. Sam gave her a grateful smile, her words easing some of the tension in his chest. I guess I just need to remind myself why we're doing this, he said. Sometimes in all the busyness, it's easy to lose sight of the bigger picture. As if on cue, there was a soft knock on the bakery's door. Both Sam and Olivia turned toward the sound, puzzled. The sign on the door clearly stated that the bakery was closed, but the silhouette of a woman with 2 small children stood just beyond the glass. Olivia rose to her feet and opened the door, her welcoming smile never faltering. I'm so sorry to bother you, the woman said, her voice tinged with embarrassment. I didn't realize you were closed. I heard about your bakery, and I was hoping... Her voice trailed off as she looked down at the 2 children clutching her hands. Sam stood and stepped forward, his voice gentle. It's okay. Come on in. What can we do for you? The woman hesitated, then stepped inside, her shoulders sagging with relief. I lost my job a few weeks ago, she admitted. I've been trying to make things work, but it's been hard. Someone told me you help people who are struggling, and I thought, maybe you could help us just this once. Her words hit Sam like a punch to the chest. He saw the exhaustion in her eyes, the quiet desperation in her voice. It reminded him of Olivia's story, of the little girl who had stood in the rain all those years ago. Of course, he said, his voice steady. He walked to the counter and grabbed a fresh loaf of bread, a bag of muffins, and a few cookies for the children. As he handed the bag to her, he smiled. No one should go to bed hungry. That's what we're here for. The woman's eyes filled with tears as she accepted the bag. Thank you, she whispered. You have no idea what this means to us. Sam watched as she and her children left, his heart heavy yet full. He turned to Olivia, who was watching him with a knowing smile. That, she said softly, is why we're doing this. The bakery continued to flourish in the weeks and months that followed. Sam found himself growing more comfortable with the city's pace, though the challenges were constant. There were days when the kitchen was chaotic, days when they ran out of supplies, and days when the financial strain of providing free meals to those in need felt daunting. But for every challenge, there was a moment of pure joy. A customer's heartfelt thanks, a child's delighted smile, or a handwritten note left on the counter. One day, as Sam was opening the bakery, he noticed an envelope tucked under the door. Curious, he picked it up and opened it, finding a carefully folded letter inside. The handwriting was neat but shaky, as if written by someone who had poured their heart into every word. Dear Sam and Olivia, it began. I don't know if you'll remember me, but I was here a few months ago with my children. You gave us bread and muffins when we had nothing. I wanted to let you know that your kindness gave me the strength to keep going. I've since found a job and things are starting to look up for us. Thank you for reminding me that there's still good in the world. I'll never forget what you did for us. Sam felt a lump rise in his throat as he read the letter. He showed it to Olivia, who smiled through misty eyes. It's working, Sam, she said. We're making a difference. The letter became a turning point for Sam. He began to see the bakery not as a departure from his old life, but as an extension of it. The kindness he had shown in Maplewood was now reaching far more people than he'd ever imagined. And while he still missed the quiet comfort of his small-town stall, he found a new kind of fulfillment in the connections he was building here. Months turned into a year, and Hearth and Heart became a cornerstone of the community. The pay-it-forward system Olivia had envisioned flourished, with customers leaving extra money to cover meals for those who couldn't afford them. Local businesses began to partner with the bakery, donating ingredients and supplies to support their mission. The bakery even hosted monthly community nights, where people could gather for free cooking classes, storytelling events, and shared meals. One evening, during a particularly lively community night, Sam found himself sitting at a table with a young man who had been attending regularly. The man, whose name was Aaron, had struggled with homelessness for years before finding a job through a program Olivia had helped organize. Over a plate of warm pie, Aaron shared his story. You know, this place saved me, Aaron said, his voice filled with emotion. I walked in here one day, just looking for a place to get out of the cold. I didn't expect to be treated like a person, let alone be offered a meal and a smile. You made me feel like I mattered, and that gave me the courage to turn my life around." Sam felt a swell of pride and humility as he listened. Stories like Aaron's were becoming more common, and each one reminded him of the little girl he had once helped. The girl who had grown into the extraordinary woman sitting at the counter, greeting every customer with warmth and grace. On the bakery's second anniversary, Sam and Olivia decided to hold a celebration. The bakery was decorated with twinkling lights and colorful banners, and the air buzzed with excitement as friends, customers, and supporters gathered to mark the occasion. As the evening wore on, Olivia stood on a small makeshift stage and addressed the crowd. "2 years ago, this bakery was just a dream," she began, her voice strong and steady. "A dream inspired by a single act of kindness. Sam might not admit it, but he's the heart of this place. His generosity changed my life when I was just a scared little girl, and it's changed the lives of so many others since. Hearth and Heart isn't just a bakery, it's proof that kindness can grow into something extraordinary." The crowd erupted into applause, and Sam felt his cheeks flush with embarrassment and pride. As he looked around at the smiling faces, he realized that Olivia was right. This bakery wasn't just about bread, it was about building something bigger, something lasting. As the evening wound down and the last guest trickled out, Sam and Olivia sat together outside the bakery, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance. "You know," Sam said, his voice quiet but content, "when I gave you that bag of bread all those years ago, I never imagined it would lead to all this." Olivia smiled, her eyes bright with gratitude. "That's the thing about kindness, Sam. It has a way of growing far beyond what you expect." As the stars began to peek through the night sky, Sam felt a deep sense of peace. The little brown paper bag, the bakery, the lives they had touched, it all felt like part of a bigger story, one that had only just begun. And for the first time, he knew he was exactly where he was meant to be. Thank you so much for watching our video. We hope this story touched your heart and reminded you of the incredible power of kindness. Every small act can make a difference, just like Sam's gesture changed Olivia's life. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more inspiring tales like this, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us spread positivity and create a community of kindness. Stay tuned for more uplifting stories, and thank you for being